On June 24th, 2009, just hours before the world lost its greatest entertainer, Michael Jackson picked up a phone and made a call that would haunt investigators for years. His voice trembled, his words were desperate, and what he said on the other end of that line revealed a truth so disturbing, so unexpected, that even seasoned detectives couldn't believe what they were hearing. "They're going to kill me," Michael whispered into the receiver. "They're going to kill me." But who was they? And why did no one listen until it was too late? This is the story of Michael Jackson's final phone call, and the chilling revelation that changed everything investigators thought they knew about his death. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional stories about Michael Jackson. The summer of 2009 had arrived in Los Angeles with an unforgiving heat, the kind that made the city shimmer like a mirage. But inside the sprawling mansion at 100 North Carrollwood Drive in Holmby Hills, Michael Jackson felt a different kind of warmth. The suffocating pressure of expectation, of promises made, of a comeback that would either resurrect his legacy or bury it forever. It was a planned concert residency scheduled to take place at the O2 Arena in London, England, between July 13, 2009 and March 6, 2010. 50 shows. Millions of fans waiting across the ocean. The greatest spectacle the world had ever seen from the greatest entertainer who had ever lived. But Michael was not the man he once was. At 50 years old, he carried decades of trauma in his bones. The stolen childhood, the accusations that nearly destroyed him, the relentless media that had turned Jacko into a punchline. Jackson had long suffered from insomnia and had a history of using drugs in an attempt to help him sleep. Night after night, he lay awake in his bedroom, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with fears both real and imagined. The children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, were his only solace. They didn't see the king of pop. They saw their father, the man who read them stories, who built pillow forts, who loved them with a ferocity that surprised even himself. Out of all the people in Michael's life, I think Michael adored his children more than anything else, his mother Catherine said. And they adored him. But even their love couldn't silence the voices in his head, the whispers that grew louder each night, the paranoia that had become his constant companion. Extracts from the late star's diary have revealed that he was afraid that someone was trying to kill him prior to his death. Jackson believed that evil people wanted to destroy him in order to get his music catalog. He had written it in his diary, scrawled in handwriting that grew more frantic with each passing week. "I'm afraid someone is trying to kill me." Evil people everywhere. His family dismissed it as anxiety. His doctors called it paranoia. But Michael knew something they didn't. He had seen the contracts. He had heard the conversations. He understood, perhaps better than anyone, the value of what he owned and what others would do to take it from him. From 2004 onwards, Michael Jackson generally became very paranoid about his own life. The singer also asked to wear a bulletproof vest during his trial at that time because he feared that people would try to kill him. Also, in the following years, he continued to fear that people would kill him in order to get his music catalog and his publishing company. That night, as the clock approached midnight, Michael sat alone in his bedroom. His phone lay beside him on the silk sheets. He knew he should call someone. He knew he should tell someone what he was feeling, what he feared, what he suspected. But who would believe him? The king of pop, afraid for his life. It sounded like the plot of a movie, not the reality of a man who had everything and nothing all at once. He picked up the phone. And that's when everything changed. The rehearsals for This Is It had consumed Michael's life for months. Rehearsals took place 6 days per week at 3 locations in California from April to June 2009. Every day, he pushed his body beyond its limits, dancing for hours, perfecting moves he had created decades earlier, determined to prove that the king still had his crown. But those closest to him saw the cracks forming. Production manager John Bugsy Hofdahl wrote in an email to Age Alive CEO Randy Phillips on June 19, 2009, "I have watched him deteriorate in front of my eyes over the last 8 weeks. He was able to do multiple 360 spins back in April. He'd fall on his ass if he tried now." The emails between AEG executives painted a picture of a man unraveling. Show director Kenny Ortega sent Jackson home from a rehearsal that night because of his strange behavior. He was a basket case, and Kenny was concerned he would embarrass himself on stage, or worse yet, get hurt, Hofdahl wrote. But the show had to go on. There was too much money at stake, too many tickets sold, too many promises made. Director Kenny Ortega told jurors that Jackson missed numerous rehearsals in mid-June. When he arrived for a rehearsal session on June 19th, 2009, Jackson was shivering, incoherent, and unable to rehearse. Michael's makeup artist, Karen Fay, who had known him for decades, barely recognized the man standing before her. Emotionally frail and physically thin, Jackson was described by Fay as paranoid, shivering from chills, and repeating himself during his last days. Come June, everything had changed. He was not the man I knew, Fay testified. But Michael kept pushing. He had to. This wasn't just a concert. It was his redemption, his chance to remind the world who he was, his final act. He told the crowd at the announcement, "This is it. When I say this is it, it really means this is it. This is a final curtain call." Those words would prove more prophetic than anyone could have imagined. In between rehearsals, Michael made phone calls to his mother, to his children, to friends scattered across the globe. But there was one call that stood out, one conversation that would later make investigators question everything they thought they knew. A friend recalled, he was an emotional meltdown saying, "They are going to murder me." After he flew out and spent 3 days with the troubled star, Jackson handed him notes. The notes kept telling him they were trying to murder Jackson. The singer never clarified who they were, but some notes refer to Concert Promoters AG, which was organizing concerts in London that he was shortly due perform. Michael's voice on those calls was different. Not the soft-spoken artist the world knew. Not the gentle father his children adored. This was a man terrified. A man who believed, with absolute certainty, that his days were numbered. And he was right. The relationship between Michael Jackson and his family had always been complicated. Built on love but fractured by fame. Strengthened by blood but weakened by decades of misunderstanding and distance. His sister Janet Jackson claimed that their family tried to stage an intervention in early 2007 when Michael was living in Las Vegas. She and some of their brothers allegedly traveled to his home but were turned away by security guards who were ordered not to let them enter. He was also rumored to have refused phone calls from his mother. But in those final weeks, something shifted. Michael began reaching out. Late-night calls to his mother, Catherine, his voice heavy with emotion. Conversations that left her worried, confused, and ultimately heartbroken. He told me several times that he felt that people wanted him gone, wanted him dead. Catherine Jackson said in an interview, "It's just some of the mean, evil, vicious people didn't want him around for some reason. They're greedy." Catherine didn't know what to do with these revelations. Her son had always been sensitive, always prone to worry. But this was different. This was fear, raw, primal, all-consuming fear. She tried to reassure him, told him the concert would be a triumph, told him the world still loved him, told him everything would be okay. But Michael knew better. He had seen too much, heard too much, understood too much about the machinery that surrounded him. The managers, the lawyers, the doctors, the promoters, all of them with their hands in his pockets, all of them with their own agendas. His ex-wife, Lisa Marie Presley, had warned him about this years earlier. She recalled Jackson questioning her about the circumstances of her father's death. He stared at her intensely and stated with an almost calm certainty, "I am afraid that I'm going to end up like him, the way he did." Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, dead at 42, surrounded by enablers and sycophants. Later, Lisa Marie bemoaned the fact that Jackson, like her father, had surrounded himself with sycophants whom she referred to as vampires. Michael had seen the parallels. He had lived them. And now, as the clock ticked toward his final days, he felt the walls closing in. The vampires were circling. And no one, not his family, not his friends, not the millions of fans who adored him, could save him from what was coming. His phone calls became more frantic, more desperate, more revealing, and one of them would change everything. The pressure surrounding the This Is It concerts was unlike anything Michael had ever experienced. Jackson had written new songs and was rehearsing multiple hours a day in preparation for This Is It, an arena spectacle that had reportedly incurred $25 million in pre-production costs. The financial stakes were astronomical, the expectations impossible, and Michael, caught in the center of it all, was being crushed. But in 2009, as he prepared for his 50-show comeback tour at London's newly opened O2 Arena, Jackson was battling an addiction to prescription drugs, riddled with self-doubt and deeply in debt. The doctors came and went. Pills were prescribed. Injections administered. Sleep, real restorative sleep, remained elusive. Cardiologist Conrad Murray joined Jackson's camp in May 2009 as part of Jackson's agreement with AEG Live, the promoter of his London concerts. Murray first met Jackson in Las Vegas when he treated one of Jackson's children. AEG Live said Jackson insisted the company hire Murray to accompany him to England. Murray was paid handsomely for his services. Dr. Murray was paid $100,000 a month to obtain and administer his medication. At first, the doctor secured downers, including Xanax, Restoral, Ativan, and Versed. But nothing worked. Not really. Michael would close his eyes, only to have him snap open hours later, his mind racing, his heart pounding, the fears returning like unwelcome guests. Jackson was repeatedly asking him for milk, a nickname for the powerful surgical general anesthetic propofol, which Jackson had used in the past as a sleep aid. Jackson had his doctor buy 5,000 milliliters of sedative propofol, which Jackson called milk. It was enough to anesthetize all the pre-op patients in a hospital for a week, and it was this drug, administered intravenously, that killed him. The paparazzi followed his every move. Cameras flashed outside the rehearsal studio. Tabloids speculated about his health, his sanity, his future. The world watched, waited, judged. Inside the cocoon of his mansion, Michael felt exposed, vulnerable, watched. He asked to wear a bulletproof vest on stage while performing during the This Is It concerts because he feared that snipers would infiltrate into the audience in order to shoot him. His security team dismissed the request as paranoia. But Michael insisted. He had received death threats before, too many to count over the decades. If you had been receiving death threats since you were a child, you would wear a bulletproof vest too. The external pressures were mounting. AEG executives were growing impatient. The ticket holders were waiting. The crew was working around the clock. And Michael, fragile, exhausted, terrified Michael, was expected to deliver a miracle. He picked up his phone again, dialed a number, and what he said next would send shockwaves through the investigation. A recording allegedly captured Michael Jackson's last phone call on June 24th, 2009. He sounds worried and scared that someone is out to get him. The person on the other end of the line that night would later describe Michael's voice as barely recognizable. Not the confident showman, not the eccentric artist. This was a man at the end of his rope, trembling, desperate, pleading. After he got off the phone, he would cry. Prince Jackson testified. He would say, "They're going to kill me. They're going to kill me." His father told him he was talking about AEG Live CEO Randy Phillips and his ex-manager, Dr. Tome Tome. The revelation stunned investigators. Here was the king of pop, naming names, pointing fingers, cry out for help, and no one had listened. The note read, "They are trying to murder me." Jackson continued that he was scared about his life, and that the system wants to kill me for my catalog. His music catalog, the crown jewel of his empire. The Beatles songs that he had purchased decades earlier, now worth hundreds of millions. Jackson's diary also revealed he was trying to take back control of his assets and cut loose managers and advisors he felt were taking advantage. Everyone wanted a piece of Michael Jackson. The managers who took their percentages, the lawyers who billed by the hour, the promoters who saw dollar signs where others saw a human being. And Michael knew. He had always known. But now, in the final weeks of his life, the knowledge was unbearable. He wasn't just an artist anymore. He was a commodity, a brand, a meal ticket for everyone who surrounded him. A voicemail by Jackson's manager, Frank Dilio, was left for Murray on June 20th, 2009. In the voicemail, Dilio tells Murray, "Would you please call me? I'm sure you're aware he had an episode last night. He's sick. I think you need to get a blood test on him. The episode, the sickness, the desperation. But what did Michael know that others didn't? What truth had he uncovered in those final days? And why did his warnings go unheeded? Investigators would spend years trying to answer these questions. But the truth, the real truth, died with Michael Jackson. Or so everyone thought. Before his last rehearsal, Michael had a meeting with Ken Ehrlich, Randy Phillips, Tim Leweek, and Frank Dillio. During the meeting, they discussed making a Halloween special with CBS, with Ehrlich being planned to produce it. The special would center around Michael's 1997 film Ghosts, with Michael planned to host and perform it. It would have been produced for an October 31st, 2009 release date. More plans, more promises, more pressure. Michael arrived at the Staples Center at around 5 p.m., but didn't start rehearsing until 9 p.m. Ed Alonzo, a magician hired to help create the opening segment for the concerts, spoke with Michael before the rehearsal started. Michael jokingly complained of laryngitis. Alonzo noted that Michael looked great and had great energy, but appearances could be deceiving. Behind the smile, Michael was exhausted. Behind the energy, Michael was terrified. The last song Jackson rehearsed was Earth Song on June 24th, 2009, also becoming the last time he sang during his lifetime. Jackson's final rehearsal lasted till around midnight, June 25th, 2009. As the cast and crew prepared to leave, Michael lingered. He spoke to his costume designer, his musical director, his dancers. The rehearsal went past midnight on June 25th. As the cast and crew were leaving, Jackson spoke with costume designer Michael Bush and musical director Michael Bearden, confirming he would be in the following afternoon at around 2 p.m. "See you tomorrow," he said. But tomorrow would never come. Not for Michael Jackson. Jackson returned to his home at 100 North Carrollwood Drive in the Holmby Hills neighborhood around 12:30 a.m. the following morning and retired to bed 1 hour later. Jackson had long suffered from insomnia and had a history of using drugs in an attempt to help him sleep. Dr. Conrad Murray was waiting. Jackson's personal physician, Conrad Murray, was present to help Jackson sleep and gave him various drugs including diazepam, lorazepam, and midazolam while monitoring him by his bedside. After several hours and several drug injections, Jackson was still unable to fall asleep. At 10:40 a.m., with Jackson still not asleep, Murray relented to his requests and injected him with 25 milligrams of propofol diluted with lidocaine. And then the unthinkable happened. With Jackson finally asleep, Murray testified that he left his bedside to go to the bathroom, and after returning 2 minutes later, discovered that Jackson was not breathing and had a weak pulse. The king was dying, and the phone, the same phone that had carried Michael's desperate pleas, his warnings, his fears, sat silent on the nightstand. On June 25th, 2009, the American singer Michael Jackson died of acute propofol intoxication in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 50. His personal physician, Conrad Murray, said that he found Jackson in his bedroom not breathing and with a weak pulse. He administered cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, to no avail, and security called 911 at 12:21 p.m. Paramedics treated Jackson at the scene, but he was pronounced dead at the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center in Westwood at 2:26 p.m. The world stopped. Millions of fans wept in the streets. Vigils were held across the globe. The king of pop, the man who had defined an era, who had changed music forever, was gone, but the questions remained. Katherine Jackson said the varied stories that have surfaced since Michael's death have left her wondering about the truth. In fact, it's the one thing she'd ask him about if she could see him again. My goodness, I'd have so much to say to Michael, but the main thing I want to know is what really happened. Jackson said. Investigators began piecing together Michael's final days, the phone records, the emails, the testimony of those closest to him. Prince recounted the day his father died 4 years ago. He saw his father hanging halfway off the bed. His eyes were rolled back when he ran into the bedroom where Dr. Murray was doing CPR in a futile effort to revive him. Paris followed him up the stairs, but we kept pulling her down the stairs. Prince said. She was screaming the whole time saying she wants her daddy. The children, Michael's greatest love, left without their father, left with questions that would never be answered. On August 28th, 2009, the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner concluded that Jackson's death was a homicide. Homicide, not an accident, not a tragic mistake. Homicide. In 2017, Paris Jackson told Rolling Stone magazine that she was convinced her father had been murdered. The phone calls, the notes, the warnings. Michael had known. He had tried to tell everyone. And in the end, his fears had proven prophetic. And I mean, you can call it paranoia, but he was killed by someone, and his catalog was sold off. The truth that shocked investigators wasn't just about drugs or doctors or negligence. It was about a man who saw his own death coming and couldn't stop it. Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in November 2011 and was released in 2013 after serving 2 years of his 4-year prison sentence with time off for good behavior. 2 years. For the life of Michael Jackson. For the devastation of 3 children. For the silencing of the world's greatest entertainer. It wasn't justice. Not really. But it was something. The Jackson family continued their fight. Katherine Jackson filed a wrongful death lawsuit against AEG Live. The trial revealed the depths of Michael's struggles in those final weeks. The emails, the missed rehearsals, the desperation. The email chain, titled Trouble at the Front, is key evidence in the trial in which Jackson's mother and 3 children contend Age Alive is liable for the singer's death because it negligently hired, retained, and supervised Dr. Conrad Murray. Murray told police he used a surgical anesthetic propofol to treat Jackson's insomnia so he could be rested for rehearsals. The world learned what Michael had known all along. He was being pushed too hard, watched too closely, used too completely. His sister La Toya stated that his daughter said he was being overworked. La Toya was quoted as saying, she said, "No, you don't understand. They kept working him and Daddy didn't want that, but they worked him constantly." I felt so bad. But perhaps the most haunting revelation came from Elizabeth Taylor, Michael's dear friend, who said that she could not imagine life without him, and Lisa Marie Presley, who had warned him years earlier, who had watched him spiral, who had tried to save him. The hardest decision I've ever had to make, which was to walk away and let his fate have him, even though I desperately loved him and tried to stop or reverse it somehow. Michael's phone calls echoed through the years. His warnings, his fears, his desperate pleas for someone, anyone, to believe him. In the end, the truth was simple and devastating. Michael Jackson knew he was going to die. He told everyone who would listen, and they all thought he was paranoid, until it was too late. Thriller, Billie Jean, Man in the Mirror, songs that define generations, songs that will live forever. But for those who love Michael Jackson, truly love him, the music is bittersweet, a reminder of what was, a reminder of what could have been. The image of my son as a little boy is the portrait that I have in my mind when I think of him, Katherine Jackson said. I think of my son all through the day, all the time, and I don't like to talk about him because I get all choked up. Sometimes during the day, I can hear his laughter in my mind. His children have grown. Prince, Paris, and Blanket carry their father's legacy in their hearts, their memories, their very existence. They remember the pillow forts, the bedtime stories, the father who loved them more than anything in the world. On a tape recorded by Dr. Murray, Jackson described starting a children's hospital with the proceeds from This Is a Tour. My performances will be up there helping my children, and always be my dream. I love them. I love them because I didn't have a childhood. I had no childhood. I feel their pain. I feel their hurt. I can deal with it. Even in his darkest moments, Michael was thinking of others, of children, of healing, of love. The final phone call revealed a man in crisis, but also revealed a man with a heart bigger than any stadium he ever played. A man who, despite his fears, kept performing, kept creating, kept loving. His warnings went unheeded. His fears were dismissed. His life was cut short by those who valued his talent more than his humanity. But his legacy endures. In every moonwalk replicated by a child in their living room. In every thriller, dance at every wedding. In every moment when someone puts on their headphones and lets Michael Jackson's voice transport them to another time, another place, another world, he told us to look at the man in the mirror, to make a change, to heal the world. And perhaps the greatest tribute we can offer is to listen, truly listen, when someone cries out for help, to believe them, to protect them, to love them. Michael Jackson made that final phone call because he needed someone to hear him. Today, we hear you, Michael. Today and always. If this story inspired you, remember, even legends face battles unknown to the world. Subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who loves Michael Jackson.